So a few months ago, I introduced you all to the latest project on the channel, a Phaeton W12 that I managed to find on Facebook Marketplace. This magnificent machine set me back just £3,500 and had led quite an interesting life. From rolling off the production line in the pristine transparent factory to then being part of VW UK's press fleet in the early 2000s. Unfortunately, the state I found it in back in 2023 wasn't quite so glamorous, as the car had been abandoned for many years. It still ran and looked relatively original, but there were some problems, with the main culprit being a battery light on the dash, essentially telling us that it's not charging. So in the first video, I thought I'd try some basics like chucking in a pair of new batteries in the correct OEM spec, but that didn't change anything. The light was still illuminated, and after around a day or so, both batteries were completely depleted. So before going too overkill with the diagnosis and chasing wires around the car, I figured we'll give a new alternator a try. So that's the plan for today, in addition to a complete engine service. Also, in regards to that underside that we explored in the last video, I have got a nice update to share with you folks. Just like most of you recommended, ice blasting does seem like the way to go, as in theory it should bring it as close to new as possible. I've spoken to the ice blasters, they're happy to be involved, but we've agreed that it's better if I send the car up to them, as it means they can spend a few days on it rather than rushing through on a mobile job. So yeah, all of that fantastic stuff will be coming up in a future episode, but before any logistics can happen, we need this car to be charging and actually movable more than a few feet without a jump pack. There's also the quite significant fact of it not having had a recorded oil change in over 10 years, and I think it's about time we address that. I have checked the dipstick, it's all good in terms of the level, and it's consistent with the fact that we have no leaks, but I thought I'd go and buy this bucket. It's harder than you think to find a bucket with measurements on the side. This one has leaves on it because it's some plant food or pet food orientated one, but we'll just see how much comes out, and because it's see-through we can actually see how bad it looks. Drain plug is right here. We've got another line or oil feed going into the front part, but we'll leave that alone. Wow, who's put that on? Oh, there we go. Hopefully it doesn't strip. That looks pretty disgusting. Okay, sometime later, we've finally drained all of the oil. It's just dripping now, so it's pretty much done. The interesting thing here is the bucket is telling me 12.5 litres came out. So either this bucket's wrong, or someone has put more oil in than factory, because we haven't even taken out the filter yet. Now you'd think that the oil capacity of a Phaeton W12 would be pretty clear cut, right? Well, it turns out that isn't the case, as VW actually made two completely different versions of an already rare car. If we head over to the official workshop manual, we can see that my car with engine code BAN has a total capacity of 11.8 litres, and for the most part every later UK spec W12 I've seen is called BRN, and that has a total capacity of 12.5 litres, which is quite a noticeable difference. The easiest way to tell them apart visually is the design of the intake manifold, but they also have different power outputs. In the past I will have just unbolted the filter housing and just let all of this blast out, but I've learnt my lesson, because I've been standing here for almost 2 minutes now and it's still dripping, so imagine all of that in one go. Time for the main event. Come on. There we go. Maybe don't talk when you're undoing a filter housing, and you won't lose your 36mm socket in a bucket of oil. Nice and dry. Yeah, the condition isn't actually that bad. Okay then, inspection time. We've got our final reading on the bucket, and it is claiming 13.6 litres. Yeah, I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that bucket is not accurate. I don't think we've got almost 2 litres more of oil in this thing. Condition wise, it just looks like very old oil. There's no light brown goldenness in there at all anymore. It still does have a bit of weight to it. It's not completely water-like. But the thing that I was most excited about is the oil filter. We should be able to see the date on it and the brand. Shine the light on there. Doesn't look like there's any particles or anything. Off a brief inspection anyway. It's a MAN filter, which is a good brand. I tend to go with them if I'm not going for OE. Made in Germany. So I've got nothing on the bottom there, so I'm assuming that is the date there. It does add up. Obviously it's not going to be the 24 one, because it was parked in my garden that whole time in 2024. So I can only assume that's the date backwards, so 24th April 14. I haven't got the exact date off memory, but well, thankfully that's where editing comes in. So in the previous video, when we went through the car's paperwork, it was noted that the last recorded oil change was at 66,000 miles, and that was in October of 2014. So yes, that does indeed confirm that this magnificent car has not had an oil change in over 10 years. Got a genuine filter, seems like it matches up with that. It is different on some W12s. I did also give the filter housing a good old shower to get rid of all of that ancient oil in there. Got a bit of oil on the O-ring, of course. This can go straight back in. And this is only 10, so we'll just snug it up essentially. That's enough. Fair bit of a mess going on here. Can't really get a torque wrench on there, so snug. Don't want to bend this line and then I can't get it and the car's off the road for the next 5 years because of NLA stuff. It looks quite rusty. Well, obviously check for leaks afterwards. Okay, so that's all the oil inspection out of the way. Next up is taking off this intake manifold because we're going to fill it up towards the end of the video. I want to get access to each of the rocker covers. We're going to check out the gasket, see if there's any leaks. And then of course at the same time we can pull out the spark plugs, check the condition of those. So yeah, essentially all of this is going to come out and then we'll be exposed to 2 banks of VR6s. Now before we unbolt the intake manifold itself, we need to detach it from everything else in the engine bay. One of those things is the airbox, or rather 2, as a W12 has 1 for either cylinder bank. The air filters are of course nestled in each one, which is a pretty standard service item for almost every car on this planet. So because of that fact, you'd assume that this would be the one thing that's accessible on a Phaeton. But no, it turns out VW had their own plans as they decided to put a hard coolant pipe over the driver's side airbox. And from what I could gather, there's no way to get access to that filter without having antifreeze constantly dripping out, which also means that you're gonna have to bleed the system afterwards. Amazing bit of design, don't you think? All right, this appears to be a duct that's taking air from the grill into that airbox. If we remove it, we should have a bit more space. The key word of a Phaeton W12's engine bay, space. Is that coming out? Go on then. For a second then, I was thinking I'm gonna need to take the front panel off. The only strange thing is, even if I pull that off, there's no way for you to maneuver it. Heat shields go into it as well, of course. I definitely understand now why everyone's been going on about working on a W12. I'm getting perplexed by air filters. Wow, what a whole circus that is. Air filter doesn't look too obliterated, which is good. Let's have a look at the date on it. Oh, nice. Very nice. Nah, that can't be right. That cannot be right. Look at the date. 24th of November 2006. I don't even know what to say. If any of you are wondering whether or not this car truly was abandoned or not treated well, there's your answer. Of course, there is the possibility that this was an off-the-shelf item and it was a few years old, but I don't think people stock air filters from 2006, even if this was 10 years ago. Wow. No coolant lines on this side to worry about. In a way, I am kind of happy that I've managed to get a Phaeton W12 that hasn't been touched, but I think if this had more miles on it, it definitely would have blown up or something crazy by now. Easier. Okay, so this one is from the 20th of September 2007, so it's a year newer. So it could potentially be the case that that side was on the shelf longer, like the situation I've had when I'm buying the air filters now. One side's always been a bit less available, but either way, this is still no good. This air filter is almost 18 years old. One there. Breather hose, here we go, 2, go on then. All right, so we've got a bunch of T40s in the middle here. This is what essentially secures this intake manifold down, in theory. seam's loose. Bit of a surreal moment, that. We still got stuff attached though. Round 2. Oh, look at that. Okay, exciting times. The intake manifold of the W12 has been removed. Not too bad overall. Most of the screws are in the center here, but you just need to worry about those pipes at the back, mainly because if you break them, you can't find them again. I'm pretty sure most of the stuff in this engine bay is no longer available. But yeah, it's cool to finally see both of our VR6s to make that W12. As I mentioned, we haven't got any leaks at the bottom of the engine, but do we have any up top? You can see the gasket. I mean, that could just be dirt. Doesn't seem to be pouring out anywhere. This bank looks relatively dry. Now this bit of oil here was actually when I unplugged this line. So that must have been in the intake manifold. I'll obviously clean that up shortly. It's over there somewhere. These clips seem okay. Obviously that center one there has been repaired with a zip tie. Coil packs, obviously we've got 12 because it's a 12-cylinder engine. That bit of coolant was from one of these lines, so nothing to worry about there. So many bits of debris. Can't really see a leak on the edge of the rocker cover at all. But yeah, let's have a quick look at the ports because I am going to tape them up. I can't imagine this has carbon buildup because it's not an FSI engine. There you go, that's a good look at one. Yeah, looks relatively clean. Yep. It's like looking for a little candle in the dark, isn't it? I think if it was all black in there, I would be concerned, but I don't think that's even a problem. And we're going to touch up on this later when I put it back on because there's a bit of an interesting story with these. Can't risk anything, my friends. Okay, we're looking forward to this bit. It's like these little ridges underneath here where there's so much, I can't even say dirt, there's like stones in there, leaves, rainforest bits. And look at the size of that leaf. What on earth? Right, it might not look like much has changed here, but I spent about 45 minutes blowing out all of the dirt. I found a bunch of these shells, this is just a few of them. I'd say there was maybe 30 or 40 hidden in the valley between the W. So I'm just wondering if any of you wildlife experts have got anything to add in regards to what these are. Has something been sitting in there, eating them or gathering them? Why would there be so many and in that particular spot? Either way, let's continue. We're going to remove these. Just like a VR6, except everything's times 12. How on earth you get that off? This is a PCV line that's running around the oil cap, which is interesting. Doesn't have much play. Looks like we'll have to remove that funnel. Not too bad. Dry. Gotta be careful with them, they're so weak. VW. At least this bit's easy. I tell you what wasn't easy though, these two sensors on each cylinder bank. The connector isn't anything special, it's the usual Volkswagen style one, but there's no space for anything and they're pointed downwards so you can't get a tool on there, or maybe you need to have microscopic hands, which I don't have. I did manage to get it sorted, but it took me another 40 minutes to figure out. All part of the fun, I guess. There you go. Right, after all that, I think we're finally ready to remove these rocker covers. There's no way to do this without prying this coolant pipe out of the way. Hopefully nothing drops in. PCV pipe broken. Yeah, it's all snapped. You win some, you lose some. What can you do? That's probably NLA, but I've tried my hardest not to break anything, and it still breaks, so what can you do? Lovely. Very familiar sight that looks almost identical to the R32 and the R36s. It's just two of them. We did of course have one casualty, this PCV pipe, which normally routes down to there. I've taken the connection off, it normally clips on, so I just snapped clean off. I think this rubber's, well, you can see it's very brittle, over 20 years old, so we're gonna have to fix that. But in terms of the engine itself, it actually looks very clean. There's no sludge in the top part there. The cams look as you'd expected. There's no like excessive scoring or anything like that. We of course have the chains at the back on this. They're both obviously at the back. Well, if you try and, yeah, I mean, that's not even moving at all. There's zero slack in it. VR6s are known to have timing chain issues, and I have done it on the R36, but I never really hear of people doing them on W12s. Either way, I've not really got any plans to mess around with that. It all seems good. On startup, this engine just sounds beautiful with the exception of all of that pulley racket down there. I'm pretty certain that none of this has been off. We've got the sealant on either corner there that looks very sort of symmetrical, which says to me that it was done by the factory. Yeah, it's almost perfectly done. There's no oil in any of those ports. Dry, dry, yep, dry. But in terms of the rocker covers themselves, they all look relatively normal. There's nothing really to note here other than the fact that they weren't leaking to begin with, and they actually seem pretty supple. On the R36, when I changed them, they almost crumbled when I removed it, but yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. I suppose it is a good sign that these cars are built pretty well. Now, whilst the covers and their respective gaskets were in fact doing their job correctly, and it turned out I didn't really need to remove them, the visual side of things wasn't so great. I thought I'd see what could be achieved by giving them a good scrub down with some cleaning products, but unfortunately that didn't do anything. And that's because there wasn't actually any dirt on them. It was the aluminium itself that had gotten quite pitted over the years. So I've had a bit of an idea. I think I'm going to go ahead and paint these. I did actually just call the guys at Ice Blasters and ask them whether or not they could improve this. But they basically said that ice blasting is mainly a way of lifting the dirt, and to get a sort of perfect finish on this, you will need to media blast it or something like that. My only concern with this bank is we've got a little sticker there with the engine number. I don't want to lose that. And they said that with ice blasting, it's probably going to start lifting. Same with any other form of blasting. So this is the stuff I'm going to use. It's just silver VHT flame-proof paint. I gave it a go on the R36 exhaust, and there's the temperature rating. It's definitely going to withstand whatever a rocker cover has to throw at it. I am trying to play it safe with this sticker because I want to mask it, but then there was the issue of the tape pulling off this sticker. And I was overthinking it perhaps, but this is how it goes with one of my projects. So I went over to the parts store. First picked up this, which is frog tape, usual painting masking tape. But then I found out there's this one, which says delicate surface, low tack. So I'm assuming this is less violent. So we'll put some of this on. Go on, slowly. Not too happy with that. It's mainly this top edge where the paint has managed to make its way through, but it's a bit of a tricky situation because if I used stronger tape on like that low tack one that I trialed, I might have got a better mask, but then when you go to reveal it like I just did, it might have just pulled the whole sticker off. Anyway, you live and learn. I have got high-res photos of the sticker in its original form if any of you watching can replicate it in a high-quality format. As for the colour itself, I think it's definitely a nice upgrade from the previous pitted mess, as that matte silver finish keeps it in line with the whole OEM aluminium look. For the replacement rubber, I went with a mix of genuine and aftermarket. The main gaskets were from L-Ring and as a result pretty fairly priced, but the spark plug seals are where things got a bit painful. I made the mistake of thinking they were the same as an R32 as they do have the same part number, except for the most important bit, the letter at the end. The W12 was version D and the Golf was version F. Unfortunately, by the time I realised this massive error, I'd already paid £60 for 12 of these Febi items that were designed for a VR6. It's not even like I could make them work, they were a completely different size and internal shape. So I had a quick look online to see if I could get some aftermarket W12 ones at short notice, and no, they were on back order. But thankfully OEM seals were available next day, so I bit the bullet and got a set of 12 at, wait for it, £10 each. So yes, that's £120 for a set of 12, add on the 60 I spent previously, and I'm £180 deep into these rubber seals. W12 life, eh? Oh, and yeah, before I forget, it was a further £40 for the 4 sensor seals at the back, but thankfully they were quite brittle, so I felt like I got some value out of this whole ordeal. Right, this is going to be interesting. Okay, and then we've got our filler neck, which I've cleaned up a bit. We need to reattach that. And we've got this little O-ring here, so I want to remove that. We've got our brand new one. Okay then, looking good. I am pretty pleased with the end result now that the rocker covers are back where they should be. When they're on the table, you're looking for every last imperfection, but when you see them like that, it definitely looks impressive seeing such a big engine. 5/8 magnetic spark plug socket with a swivel on the end. Of course, someone's tightened them like crazy, so I'm gonna have to try the bar. Don't really want to, but you know what? To be honest, they don't look too bad, but let's get them all out. Yes. So the condition of the original plugs were pretty decent. They were all OEM NGKs. None of them had damage or any signs of serious overfueling. Pretty impressive considering the fact that they were last apparently changed in 2009. Brand new ones from Volkswagen were coming in at £28 each, which means a total of just under £340 because of course everything on this thing is times 12. But after a quick browse online, for some reason I found a retailer selling one set of 12 spark plugs for a W12 engine in the exact part number for £150. So that was a no-brainer, nearly £200 saved, which conveniently helps offset those seals that keep these things dry in the first place. As for the coil packs, they were all again OEM Volkswagen. It's hard to say whether that 610 refers to them being produced in 2010, as there's no history to suggest they've ever been replaced, but they all had this number on there and they were matching and in perfect working order, so I just gave them a quick wipe down and they look like brand new again. Spider literally just fell in front of my face then. I'm glad it didn't go in the cylinder. To be fair, if it did, it would have got obliterated anyway. Lovely. Yep, carefully place these back. Second bank. We're going to have to take the filler neck off again. Just when you thought the W12 was playing easy. I didn't paint around the sort of sealing edge, so we shouldn't have any issues. These are all working perfectly fine as well, so I don't anticipate anything now. 1, 2. They are numbered, which is interesting. I believe that's OEM. That's what all of the yellow markers are. I didn't actually put those on. Then the vacuum line sits on top, yeah. It's all about doing it correctly. Okay. With all of that wrapped up, it was time to move on to a refresh of the auxiliary components, including of course the main event, a replacement alternator that I've been waiting for ages. To access everything nice and freely, the front end does need to come off, a task which ordinarily I'm quite used to on a Volkswagen, but this is a Phaeton at the end of the day. It's built to a different standard, so I'm sure there will be some surprises. This piece seems to just be hanging off for whatever reason. It's like a little window for me to see in there. I'm guessing next we need to take these. I was going to say take the grill off, but it does seem to be on. Does that just come off? Ah, it does. Looks like one of the bumper screws that I was going to remove has already been quick released for us. Yeah, look, T30 still here on this side. I've never seen one that long on a Volkswagen bumper. Fair play. Maybe if we lower this slightly. Yeah. Can we unplug? Yes. This one I'm hoping I can just undo those two there, and then it leaves the rest of the bumper alone. Everything's neatly tucked. Looks like we are ready to release the bumper. Yep. That was actually easier than a Golf. I can go here for now. Looks like I've got this headlight bracket next. That doesn't seem very nice. Can't be right. Okay, now we don't have to bother with the headlights from what I've seen online, so I'll leave them in place. Oh, there's the water. And come out now. Hopefully this bracket doesn't snap. This one's rounded. When in doubt, hammer and hand tools. Maybe the middle piece needs to come off first. See? Now, as far as I can tell, this bit seems very normal Volkswagen-ish. Got the 4 crash bar bolts, which are probably 16 millimeters. A few Torxes going into this plastic panel, but we also have these extra little rads up front. That's probably maybe some form of an oil cooler radiator. Yep, it goes sideways. Right, let's give this a go. Now from here, I think the plan is to undo that side, so then this can swing out like that, and then we can access the front of the engine, and that will prevent us having to worry about AC lines being drained. I haven't got the equipment for that. And everything so far is looking very clean. We've got no leaks on the radiator as far as I can tell. That is no longer available if it does go wrong. Got the AC condenser up front as you do. But a nice little cool Phaeton feature. This is a protective kind of plastic. It's the only bit that's exposed with the bumper. I wish the Golfs came with something like that because they do get battered. Even despite this, I've got some pitting. But yeah, it definitely looks like a bit of a beast from this angle, doesn't it? We'll give the multiple zip tie trick a go. Got 3 on there. Bit better than it just swinging around, I think. I thought we'd just double check underneath here before we start yanking on anything. And it appears this rusty pipe, which is separate to the front panel, is attached with T30s. And we've got the fan plug over there. Got the lower radiator hose here as well with a quick release clamp. Let's see what the splash radius is. All right, everywhere but the drain pan. Pretty dry that. Maybe all the coolant's already drained out at this point. But will this swing further out now? Looks like that's done the trick. And there we have it, folks. That's the front of the W12 finally exposed, and we can see a bunch of the problem areas that we've been working towards in a way. Got the alternator there in the bottom left corner. We've also got the auxiliary belt and the pulleys, which were squeaking, of course. This up here is the water pump pulley, and the water pump is behind that. We're going to be changing that as well. But first, we need to get on this tensioner and get the belt off. All right, 30mm socket, see if that works. Yeah, it should come off. Pretty straightforward. Wow, the amount of dust that's coming off this. We'll get everything off and then look at it all in one go. These are the 2 rollers which are identical. Caps. Very stubborn. These look like M6s. Not risking that rounding off. Four. There we go. Prepare for any coolant? No, it's already all dripped onto the floor. Water pump out. Let's get the alternator next finally. Okay, so it's nestled pretty nicely down here. I think we're going to have to get rid of this pipe. There's only 2 bolts, but one thing very strange is the fact that we've got an e-Torx on here. I've never seen one on a Volkswagen before. We've got one 13mm bolt, E12 socket. I mean, there's a first for everything. I suppose it makes sense. It's on a Phaeton. Now, because the workshop manual wasn't too generous, I was mostly freestyling this whole process. So next I figured I'd try a bit of prying to see if it would allow me to access the connections at the rear. But of course that didn't go to plan. It turns out you need to remove the driver's side catch can to even have a chance. And even with it out the way, it's still a pain, but it is manageable. I just recommend swapping your hands out for a smaller size. Unfortunately, I couldn't quite get that option done. There's a bracket that locks the 2 coolant pipes in place, a nut holding the main power cable on, and a typical VW style electrical plug. I think one of the coolant pipes is free as well. It's this one down here. Here you are. Okay, there's nothing holding this in now, so let's just go for it. About time. And here's what all of it looks like. You're pretty much going by feel with this whole process. Okay, everything's been removed. It is pretty interesting seeing a Phaeton like that on the lift from this angle. But I've gone ahead and laid out all of the bits that we're going to be reattaching, and we'll give you a little comparison of the older stuff. Now we'll start over on this side with the belt. It is pretty substantial. It also is ribbed on both sides, which is something new to me. I've not seen that before. But I think because of that, we've got no way of seeing a date on there. I'm pretty certain it's going to be the original one, judging by the story of this car. But what I can say is there's no signs of cracking. So it definitely could have gone on a bit longer. Maybe it is slightly higher grade than your usual auxiliary belts, being that it is a Phaeton. I've gone for the Continental replacement one, a very good brand as you know. This, I believe, is one of the most expensive parts on this whole table. I was shocked how much a new OEM belt is. I think it was close to £200, and this was just under 60. So a massive saving, and as you know, Continental isn't exactly a brand to be scared of. And over here we've got the water pump and the pulleys. With this I've gone for the INA brand. A lot of you guys who work on your cars will know that they're a fantastic manufacturer of parts, especially with auxiliary components. I've had no bad results myself anyway. The 2 pulleys are identical. These were close to £60 each, I think they were, and these I got both of them for £50–60. So basically half. Not really a complex part, but as you can see, it's made in Germany, so no real decreases in the quality. The water pump, as we saw when we were removing it, the original is VW Audi branded, so that's probably the OEM pump. If we flip it around, it's not like the VR6s where they have a plastic. In fact, actually, I may be wrong there. That doesn't really feel... No, it is plastic. The reason I say that is on the later VR6s, they changed it to metal. If you have a look at the INA one, it's made out of metal, so there's no chance of that snapping. It goes to show with all the dirt on there, you can't really tell what material it is. It took me a second, but that is definitely plastic on the original W12 water pump. So this is the point where I was going to do a side-by-side of the new and old alternator, but it turns out I got scammed. So I'll get back to that in a second. First, we're going to remove the back cover of the original to see if there's any coolant spillage, as the O-rings on the 2 lines are known to perish, and it can cause the alternator to fail because of a leakage. Well, that's that theory out the window. There was 0 signs of any coolant, so it must be an internal problem. Okay, so getting back to the new one, what exactly happened? Well, as you guys know, I've mentioned previously that this thing has been on order for quite a while. It was advertised as a genuine Delphi unit that had been refurbed. Even the advert pics looked identical to the original one, but as you can see, they're clearly not the same. The fake one's got a smooth housing, and the back cover is a lot more generic with no VW AG logo, and even the cutout for the electrical plug where you could tuck your finger in, it's not there. So I don't even know how you get that plug off without obliterating it. There was also flaky overspray everywhere, including inside the coolant ports. And there was a screw missing because there was paint inside it. The gap on the thread inserts were also a lot tighter. And usually you can get a bit of adjustment on these, but they weren't budging at all. So even bolting this thing up was probably going to be a challenge. The whole thing just didn't sit right with me, especially after all the work we've done. But because I've already waited far too long, I thought let's just give it a go and see what happens, as it does does have warranty. And just as I decided to give it that chance, it reminded me that it's definitely junk. Remember that coolant line bracket that we took off? Well, the thread on the new one wasn't even deep enough to accept the bolt, so no matter what I did, once I turn this engine back on, there will definitely be coolant flying everywhere. So I'll be honest, a bit defeated. I called it a day and did some more searching on the good old internet, and miraculously I found another listing selling refurbished W12 alternators, and it turned up the next day, and yeah, there was a pretty big difference. You could straight away tell that this was a much better execution and that it was genuine because it looked identical to the old one. What I'll do though, just because I'm extra with things, is we're going to swap this cover, which is a genuine VW one, with my original one because the sticker's still on there. Got a new nut as well for the power cable, didn't get that with the other one. Now because you've seen me taking off and trying to fit an alternator enough times in this video, I'm going to get this bolted up and I'll catch you in a second when we're torquing everything back up. Now I can't stress how easy it was to bolt up this alternator. It's perfectly lined up with those two kind of bracket areas. The coolant pipes are properly secured unlike the other one, but hopefully this works after all of this. Okay, next we'll get the new water pump on, as you've already seen. Metal at the back, but we do need to fit the O-ring that's supplied with it because the original does have it. That should do the trick. New OEM screws. Just clean up the surface a bit here, but I did notice a lot of that pink residue was along the edges, so that means that this original water pump will have eventually started leaking. It was already on the way there, in addition to it being plastic. Now thermostats are a common issue as well, but I don't think this one has a problem at the minute, so we'll leave that alone. It's buried way underneath there. Now the original pulley is in perfect working condition, so we're just going to keep this. I've cleaned it up slightly, there's no rust on it or anything, and the spinning motion is determined by this. All it does is just locate into these 4 holes, but I did get some new screws, so it does tidy it up a bit. Now, as we know, this car has got quite a bad pulley noise. This is one of the original ones. That doesn't seem to be making any noise, so it can't be that one. Here's the other. Yeah. Interestingly though, my brand new ones also make a bit of a racket, so hopefully they'll calm down. Otherwise, I've got a faulty part, but we're just gonna have to go with it. They both do it. Now the Phaeton quirks continue even when you're putting a new belt on, because the layout differs to the later 450 PS engine. So yeah, you definitely have to be on your toes. You can't just search Phaeton W12 DIY guides. It's got to be to the engine code. New Conti belt. All right, let's see if that gives us the play we need. Looks like it. And there we have it, water pump, pulleys, alternator, belt, all done. Before we swing that front panel back into place, we might as well capitalize on all the extra room and deal with that PCV hose issue. The design is actually a lot simpler than it seems with everything off, and because the only thing still attached at this point was the driver's side, it all just came off in one piece. Now whilst we did have a casualty earlier, it turned out that this would have been inevitable, as that side was already hanging on to dear life with the amount of zip ties that I saw. We've already seen the previous zip tie effort in the center, but it appears the only untouched part was the driver section. And here's my solution: black silicone piping and black Jubilee clamps. There was a fair bit of measuring and cleaning involved, as I opted to cut out all the crumbled pipework but retain the original end connectors. This would allow me to still clip into the catch can, and just like OEM. And here's the end result: a nice clean piece of black silicone pipework running the width of the engine. Much better than zip ties, orange tubes and ripped fabric, don't you think? Oh, and if this whole time you've been wondering why I didn't just get a brand new OEM pipe instead of all this faffing around, well, it's been discontinued for nearly 5 years. The clearance with the front panel is a bit tighter now, but nothing rubs, so we're all good on my part. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to speed run the rest of these bits you see here, as it's just a reversal of what you saw earlier. But I do want to show you these, a pair of brand new OEM bumper brackets. I figured instead of attempting to repair the old junk that had clearly been in a knock, I'll just check the availability of new. And yeah, it turns out they're available next day from Vauxhall Volkswagen at only £40 each, which believe me is cheap in the Phaeton world. Nice little side benefit of this, it did give me the opportunity to plumb in the driver's side washer jet as this was disconnected previously. Right then, all of the dust is gone and everything's back in place, so we can go ahead and take this tape off. Oh yeah, before I forget, remember that intake manifold gasket I removed earlier and I was going to tell you a bit more about? Well, just like most things on this car, a new one is no longer available. Yes, something as simple as that just doesn't exist anymore, and I couldn't find an aftermarket alternative. The same gasket for the 450 horsepower Phaeton W12 does exist, so I managed to get one of those and I thought I'd just try my luck, but as you can see here, it's a totally different shape. Once again proving that both engines are quite different. Thankfully the condition of mine isn't too bad, so we can get away with reusing it, but it is something that I'm going to need to look into in future. Okay, so next up is the air filters. We're going to put these new ones in, genuine Volkswagen, both sides. But the interesting thing I've noticed, they're both produced in 2023, so I imagine they've been sitting on the shelf a while. Can't be many customers for them, makes sense though. These covers, which I have cleaned up somewhat on the outside, the internals are completely immaculate, so the seal on the edge has done the trick. It didn't even need dusting down. There was nothing in there whatsoever. So whilst those are a bit battered, they weren't expired and letting anything bad into the engine, which is fantastic. This side's a bit smaller. Perfect fitment. Got these still to put in. The only car that I've ever seen with the coolant line that has to come off to change the air filters. That's got to go that way, do it properly. I think we're all secure. Last thing. And that's how you meant to put it back together as it came. Right then folks, so we finally made it. The engine bay of the Phaeton is finally back together and looking as it should. That's pretty much all of the maintenance that I wanted to do in that particular area for this episode anyway. I want to go for a startup and just see if that battery light is finally gone. And before we can do that, we need to make sure we put in some new engine oil and some coolant. That's about 13 litres of genuine Volkswagen G12 Evo. That's pretty much the one they use these days. And with the oil, I've gone for Quantum 5W40 Platinum Plus. I've used this in all the VR6s and it's done the job. And that's basically 2 VR6s, so we should be okay. But I'm pleased with the way this thing has turned out. It doesn't look especially different from this angle, but a lot of the hidden stuff has been cleaned up. Obviously, all of the loose debris has now been blasted out. That was a task in its own right. And of course, now we have a new PCV system in a way, which I'm hoping does work. Right then, oil cap. I have got myself a new toy, which I'm going to show you now. Check this out. It's like a big funnel, but the end, it has different caps for each style of engine or manufacturer. And you basically put it in like that and twist it as you would the oil cap. And in theory, should be nice and easy. It looks like, though, I can just fill this funnel up somewhat and just let it drain through. Any leaks at all? No, seal's good. Official capacity is 11.8. I've got 10 in there at the moment. There's 1.5 in this jug. Let's just put 1 in, I think, and have a look at the dipstick again. The dipstick isn't completely low. It seems to be showing that it's on, well, needs a 0.5 top up, but I don't know, it doesn't really make sense. It's showing us full with 11 litres. Obviously, we still have 0.8 to max, but I think it's probably like the VR6 one where the reading's a bit iffy. We obviously still can crank the engine with a 0.8 less in there, but we'll have to just top it up instantly, I think. Coolant, obviously we did drain a ton of it on the floor, but you're never going to completely get rid of it. So I don't think we're going to use the full 13 litres I've got. All about the angle, my friends. Obviously, we've had so many coolant pipes off. One of the other big things we need to check is if it's leaking or not. Otherwise, it'll be wasting money. I think we're ready for a startup now, or at least a crank. As you can see now, we've got the lights back on. And that's because I've gone ahead and connected both the convenience battery and the starter battery. I have been keeping them on trickle charge, so they're all good. Let's just do it. Yeah. No battery light. Look, it's gone. Before it would come on instantly. So I think we're good. All right. No leaks on the floor. Now, as you may have noticed, it did sound a bit rough on the initial point. That was because it was getting oil pressure. A nice trick that I like to do on the smaller engines is disconnect the coil packs. But because we've got a massive intake manifold back on, you can't remove all the plugs. You know how normally cars make a metallic ticking noise after you've taken them for a nice drive? This W12 is making it after a 10-second startup. Listen to this. I'll put the mic next to it. Magnificent. All right, main reason for keeping that startup short and sweet. I want to check the oil level. Just pulled the dipstick out, cleaned it, and I get a proper reading now. It's got 11.7 litres in there. The dipstick's sort of at the top, but we can manage it at this level. Also, there's no longer that pulley noise at the front. That was very squeaky, if you remember. That is a lovely sounding W12. Yeah, I'm well chuffed with that. The voltage is much improved. I don't know the exact idle voltage of these, but the fact that there's no longer the battery light indicates a good sign that it is charging. Any smoke around the back? Very good. So to round things off, I figured I'd run a diagnostic scan using VCDS. The engine's the first thing on the list, and that instantly came back clear, which was a big relief, as this means our custom job on the PCV pipework hasn't upset anything, and the rest were the typical voltage related ones that you get when you disconnect the batteries. So to check those properly, I just cleared everything and retested, and miraculously this is the end result, a mostly error-free list with no charging issues in sight. Pretty damn impressive for an old Phaeton that was left to rot for many years. Okay, so I think that's a good place to end today's episode. The Phaeton no longer has a battery light on the dash or squeaks on cold start, and also doesn't have 10-year-old oil in it. There's still a bunch of other items that I need to address, like the gearbox oil, gotta service the brakes, we need to do the fuel filter. The main reason why we're not addressing all of that whilst it's already up on the lift is because the underside is completely filthy. So yeah, especially send it off to the ice blasters. I'll get some clips whilst it's up there. They're gonna spend around 3-4 days. We'll get it back here and complete the rest of the list. But yeah, make sure you subscribe for all of that. Drop a like on today's video if you did enjoy it. And yeah, look out for the next episode somewhat soon. The gap won't be as big as this one though, because a lot of it was waiting around for dodgy alternators.